There is something fascinating about human beings. We have an incredible ability to complicate almost everything we touch. We build machines that can explore distant planets. We spend decades trying to understand the smallest particles in the universe. We read books that take months to fully grasp, admire paintings that seem impossible to explain, and enjoy conversations that leave us with more questions than answers. Complexity attracts us. It makes us feel that something deep must be hiding beneath the surface. And sometimes that belief serves us well. The universe is complex, science is complex, the human brain is complex. But there is one place where our admiration for complexity quietly becomes our greatest weakness: love. Strangely enough, many people believe that the more confusing a relationship is, the more meaningful it must be. If someone is difficult to understand, they must be special. If they send mixed signals, they must be hiding deep emotions. If they disappear for days and then suddenly return, perhaps they are simply afraid of intimacy. If they cannot commit, maybe they have been hurt before. Little by little, confusion becomes romance. Uncertainty becomes excitement. Emotional exhaustion becomes proof of devotion. Without realizing it, we stop asking a very simple question: why is this so difficult? Instead, we ask questions that have no ending. What did they really mean? Why haven't they replied? Did I say something wrong? Should I have waited longer before texting? Maybe they need more space. Maybe I asked for too much. These questions become a habit. Soon they become the relationship itself. And that is where many people lose years of their lives. Not because they loved the wrong person, but because they became addicted to solving someone they were never meant to understand. Psychologists have observed something interesting about the human mind. Our brains dislike unfinished stories. When a movie suddenly ends without an explanation, it stays with us. When someone starts telling us a secret but never finishes it, we cannot stop thinking about it. When we almost achieve something but fall just short, we often think about it more than if we had succeeded completely. This is sometimes called the zygonic effect, the tendency for unfinished experiences to stay active in our minds. Relationships often work the same way. A person who loves us consistently usually brings us peace. But a person who is unpredictable occupies our thoughts. Not because they are more valuable, but because they remain unfinished. Imagine two people. The first sends you a message every morning. They keep their promises. They tell you exactly how they feel. When they say they will call, they call. When they make plans, they show up. Around this person, your heart becomes quiet. Now imagine another person. Some days they are incredibly affectionate. Other days they disappear without explanation. One week they tell you they miss you. The next week they seem distant. Sometimes they make you feel like the most important person in the world. Other times you wonder whether they even remember your name. Which one occupies your thoughts more? For many people it is the second. Not because the second person loves them more, but because uncertainty creates obsession. The human brain mistakes unpredictability for importance. This is exactly how casinos keep people playing. A slot machine does not reward every attempt. If it did, people would quickly lose interest. Instead, rewards arrive randomly. Sometimes you win, most of the time you lose. But because you never know when the next reward will come, you keep pulling the lever. Behavioral psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement. Ironically, it is one of the strongest ways to create attachment. And sadly, many unhealthy relationships operate in exactly the same way. One loving message after 3 days of silence. One wonderful weekend after a month of emotional distance. One heartfelt apology after repeated disappointment. Each small moment of affection feels so precious that it erases weeks of loneliness, not because it should, but because our brains are wired to chase unpredictable rewards. This is why people often say, "I know they hurt me." But when things are good, they are amazing. Notice the pattern. They are not describing the relationship. They are describing the relief they feel when the pain temporarily stops. That is very different from love. Real love does not require constant recovery. Imagine living in a house where the lights randomly go out. Every evening you wonder whether tonight will be dark. Eventually, electricity returning feels exciting, but only because instability has lowered your expectations. If the lights had worked properly every day, you would never have celebrated something so ordinary. Relationships can quietly do the same thing. When affection becomes rare, we begin celebrating basic kindness. A returned phone call feels extraordinary. A simple compliment feels unforgettable. Someone remembering our birthday suddenly feels like overwhelming proof of love. Yet these are not exceptional acts. They are the minimum foundation of emotional care. Sometimes we become so thirsty that we mistake a few drops of water for an ocean. One of the saddest things about emotionally confusing relationships is that they slowly change how we see ourselves. At first we question the relationship, then we question ourselves. Maybe I'm too sensitive, maybe I expect too much. Maybe healthy love doesn't actually exist. Maybe everyone struggles like this. Eventually, we stop measuring another person's behavior. Instead, we spend all our energy measuring our own worth. We replay conversations. We analyze every text message. We search the internet for answers. What does it mean if someone leaves your message unread? How do avoidant people show love? How much space is too much space? Hours become days, days become years. Meanwhile, one uncomfortable possibility rarely enters our minds. What if the relationship is confusing simply because it isn't working? Not every mystery contains hidden wisdom. Sometimes confusion is only confusion. Imagine walking into a restaurant, you ask the waiter for water, an hour passes, nothing arrives. Would you spend the evening analyzing the waiter's childhood? Would you wonder whether they secretly fear serving water? Would you blame yourself for asking incorrectly? Probably not. You would simply conclude that this restaurant isn't functioning properly. Yet when it comes to love, we often abandon this common sense. Instead of accepting what people consistently do, we become experts at interpreting what they might someday become. We fall in love with potential, we date promises. We commit ourselves to possibilities. And possibilities can keep us trapped far longer than reality ever could. Because reality asks us to make a decision, potential asks us to wait. There is always another explanation, another excuse, another chance, another month, another conversation, another promise. Before we know it, years have quietly disappeared. Perhaps the hardest truth about love is also the simplest. The right relationship will still require effort. There will still be disagreements. There will still be moments of frustration. But you should not need to become a detective just to discover whether someone truly wants you in their life. Love is not meant to feel like solving a mystery every single day. If understanding someone requires endless investigation, perhaps the problem is not that they are incredibly complex. Perhaps the relationship itself is quietly telling you something you have been afraid to hear. Why love shouldn't feel like solving a mystery, the difference between a difficult relationship and the wrong relationship. One of the most dangerous ideas about love sounds incredibly wise. Every relationship takes work. It is repeated by parents, marriage counselors, friends, movies, and social media until it begins to sound like an unquestionable truth. And in many ways it is. No two people can share a life together without disagreements. There will always be moments when one person is tired while the other wants attention. There will be financial stress, family conflicts, misunderstandings, disappointments, and seasons when life feels heavier than usual. No lasting relationship is effortless. But somewhere along the way, many people quietly changed the meaning of this advice. They stopped hearing, relationships require effort, and started believing, if a relationship is exhausting, it must be worth fighting for. Those are two completely different ideas. A healthy relationship asks for effort. An unhealthy relationship demands survival. Knowing the difference can save years of your life. Imagine two couples. The first couple has been married for 10 years, both work full-time jobs, they have children, bills never stop arriving. Sometimes they argue about money. Sometimes one forgets an anniversary. Sometimes they misunderstand each other. But after every disagreement, something important happens. Both people move toward the problem, they apologize, they listen, they make adjustments. Neither person enjoys conflict. Neither person is trying to win. Their goal is simple: how do we make this better? Now imagine another couple. The arguments are strangely repetitive. The same problems appear every month, promises are made, nothing changes. One person constantly explains. The other constantly withdraws. One asks for clarity, the other offers confusion. Every conversation ends with, "You're asking for too much, you're too emotional, you're imagining things, you're overthinking." Months later, nothing is different. Only one person has become more anxious. Notice something important. The first relationship is difficult. The second relationship is stuck. Those are not the same thing. Healthy love creates difficult moments. Unhealthy love creates repeating patterns. The distinction is subtle but life-changing. Many people stay because they mistake repetition for progress. Every emotional conversation feels like movement. Every apology feels like growth. Every promise feels like hope. But movement is not the same as change. Imagine sitting on a rocking chair. You move all day, yet you never leave the room. Some relationships work exactly like that. Years pass. Countless conversations happen. Tears are shed, books are read, therapy is discussed, boundaries are negotiated, yet emotionally nothing moves forward. The same fears, the same disappointments, the same loneliness. Only older versions of yourselves. One reason this happens is because humans naturally confuse effort with value. The harder something is to obtain, the more precious it appears. If we spend 5 years chasing someone's affection, our minds begin telling us, it can't all have been for nothing. This psychological trap is known as the sunk cost effect. The more we invest, the harder it becomes to walk away. Not because the relationship is improving, but because leaving would force us to admit that our investment may never produce the future we imagined. Think about someone renovating a collapsing house. Every month they spend more money repairing it. Friends ask, "Why don't you just move?" Their answer is always the same: "I've already spent too much to quit now." Eventually they spend twice the value of a new house trying to save one that was never structurally sound. People often do exactly this with relationships. "I've given them 6 years. We've been through so much, I can't leave now." But time invested does not guarantee future happiness. Sometimes it only measures how long we've ignored reality. Another misunderstanding comes from confusing chemistry with compatibility. The beginning of a relationship can feel electric. Hours disappear in conversation. Physical attraction is overwhelming. Every message creates excitement, everything feels destined. But chemistry answers only one question: do we enjoy each other? Compatibility answers a much harder one. Can we build a peaceful life together? Those are very different questions. Many couples have extraordinary chemistry, yet cannot communicate without hurting one another. Others experience a quieter beginning, less fireworks, less drama. But over time they build trust so deep that life itself becomes easier. Hollywood rarely tells stories about those couples because peace looks ordinary, drama looks exciting. Movies usually end when two people finally kiss. Real life begins the morning after. That is when compatibility matters. Because love is not measured by emotional intensity. It is measured by emotional safety. Ask yourself this simple question: after spending time with this person, do I usually feel calmer or more confused? Do I feel accepted or evaluated? Do I feel understood or constantly misunderstood? Do I feel emotionally rested or emotionally exhausted? Your nervous system often knows the answer long before your mind is willing to admit it. Many people ignore this because they believe love should always feel intense. But intensity is not the opposite of boredom. Often, intensity is simply another word for instability. Think about the ocean. During a violent storm, the waves are enormous. Everything feels dramatic, powerful, unpredictable. No sailor celebrates those conditions. The goal is always calm water. Yet in relationships, people sometimes mistake emotional storms for proof that the love is real. We fight because we care. We break up because we are passionate. No one understands us, perhaps. Or perhaps the relationship simply lacks emotional stability. There is another quiet sign that many people overlook. In healthy relationships, problems become smaller over time. In unhealthy ones, your world becomes smaller. You stop seeing friends because you're always managing conflict. You stop enjoying hobbies because you're emotionally drained. Your work suffers because you're constantly distracted. You lose sleep, you lose confidence. You lose parts of yourself that once felt natural. Slowly, your entire life begins orbiting around one person's unpredictable behavior. Love should expand your world, not shrink it. One of the greatest misconceptions about mature love is that it means accepting everything. It doesn't. Maturity is not endless tolerance. Compassion does not require self-abandonment. Understanding someone's wounds does not obligate you to become their lifelong emotional caretaker. You can deeply understand why someone behaves the way they do, and still recognize that they are not capable of giving you the relationship you need. These two truths can exist together. A person may have experienced terrible childhood trauma that deserves empathy. But empathy does not magically create consistency. Someone may genuinely love you, yet still be emotionally unavailable. Love alone is not enough. Two people can care deeply about each other and still be unable to build a peaceful life together. Accepting this is one of adulthood's hardest lessons. Because we want every problem to have a solution. We believe that if we communicate better, love harder, become more patient, read another book, watch another relationship podcast, everything will finally click. Sometimes it does. Healthy couples grow because both people are growing. But when only one person is carrying the relationship, effort slowly turns into sacrifice. And sacrifice, when it has no end, eventually becomes resentment. Perhaps this is the simplest test of all. When something hurts in a healthy relationship, both people become curious. Asterisk, how can we fix this? Asterisk, when something hurts in an unhealthy relationship, one person becomes curious, while the other becomes defensive. That difference changes everything. Because relationships are not built by one person's willingness to understand. They are built by two people's willingness to meet each other halfway. The greatest tragedy is not loving the wrong person. It is spending years trying to convince someone to become the right one. And there comes a moment in every confusing relationship when one question matters more than all the others. Not, do they love me, but, is this relationship allowing me to become the person I want to be? Because love should challenge you to grow. It should never require you to disappear. One of the quietest mistakes we make in love is that we stop seeing the person in front of us. Instead, we begin seeing the person we hope they will become. This rarely happens overnight. It begins with small excuses. They are just under a lot of stress. Once their career settles down, everything will be different. They've never been truly loved before. They're afraid of commitment because they've been hurt. None of these explanations are impossible. In fact, some of them may even be true. The problem is not that we try to understand someone. The problem is that we slowly replace reality with possibility. After a while, we are no longer dating who they are, we are dating their future. We become emotionally attached to a version of them that exists only in our imagination. And imagination is a dangerous place to build a relationship because it has no limits. Every broken promise becomes another opportunity to hope. Every disappointment becomes another reason to wait. Every apology becomes evidence that change is finally beginning. Months become years. Years become a story we tell ourselves. They're getting better, but are they? Or have we simply become better at explaining why nothing has changed? There is an old saying, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Not because people can never change, people absolutely can, but real change is visible, it has direction, it has consistency. It is measured in actions, not intentions. Anyone can promise a better tomorrow. Character is revealed by what someone repeatedly does today. Imagine planting an apple seed, you water it, protect it, wait patiently. Years later, it becomes an apple tree. Patience made sense because the tree was actually growing. Now imagine planting a stone, every day you water it. You protect it from the weather. You believe that one day it will become a tree, it never does. Not because you lacked patience. Because it was never capable of becoming what you hoped. Many relationships quietly resemble watering stones. Love cannot grow where willingness does not exist. No amount of loyalty can replace another person's decision to grow. This is why one of the hardest forms of grief is not losing someone. It is letting go of the future you imagined with them. You are not only saying goodbye to a person. You are saying goodbye to birthdays you pictured, trips you planned, children you imagined. Conversations that never happened. A life that existed only in possibility. That grief feels real because the dream felt real. But healing begins the moment we stop asking, who could they become? And start asking, who are they today? Because the person you spend your life with is not the version that might exist 5 years from now. It is the one standing in front of you today. Love should be built on reality, not on hope alone. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding about healthy love is that it should feel exciting all the time. It shouldn't. In fact, many people leave good relationships because they confuse peace with boredom. After years of emotional highs and lows, calmness can feel unfamiliar. A partner who texts back consistently may seem less exciting than one who disappears for 3 days. Someone who communicates honestly may appear less mysterious than someone whose feelings must constantly be decoded, but mystery is not intimacy. Uncertainty is not passion, and emotional chaos is not evidence of deep love. Real love often feels surprisingly ordinary, not because it lacks emotion, but because it removes unnecessary fear. You do not wake up wondering where you stand. You do not spend hours rereading old conversations. You do not measure your worth by how quickly someone replies, you simply know. Not because they say the perfect words. Because their actions quietly repeat the same message every day, I'm here. Healthy love is wonderfully predictable. Not predictable in the sense that life becomes boring, life will always surprise us. People will still make mistakes. There will still be seasons of stress, illness, financial pressure, and grief. But one thing remains steady. Neither person has to earn the other's presence every single day. That consistency creates something far more valuable than excitement. It creates safety. And safety is where real intimacy begins. Think about children. A child does not become emotionally secure because a parent occasionally shows affection. Security grows because love is dependable. Because someone keeps showing up, adults are no different. Our hearts may grow older, but they still long for the same quiet certainty. To know that someone means what they say, to know that we matter. To know that we do not have to compete for love. Many people spend years searching for intense emotions. Yet what they truly need is emotional peace. One allows you to survive, the other allows you to live. Perhaps that is why the healthiest relationships rarely become dramatic stories. No one writes novels about 2 people who consistently respect each other. No blockbuster movie celebrates a couple who communicate well, apologize sincerely, and go to bed feeling safe. Drama captures attention. Peace builds a life. As you reflect on your own relationships, perhaps there is only one question that truly matters. When you imagine spending another 5 years exactly as things are today, does your heart feel lighter or heavier? The answer is often quieter than we expect. It doesn't arrive as a dramatic revelation. It appears as a gentle truth we have been avoiding. Real love does not remove every challenge, but it removes the constant need to wonder whether you are truly loved. And maybe that is the rule of simplicity. If someone genuinely wants to build a life with you, you should not have to become a detective, a therapist, a fortune teller, or a prisoner of endless hope. You simply get to become yourself. Because the greatest gift love can offer is not endless excitement. It is the quiet freedom of no longer having to question whether you belong. If a relationship constantly demands that you sacrifice your peace just to keep it alive, perhaps it is not asking you to love harder. Perhaps it is gently asking you to let go. Sometimes the bravest act is not holding on. Sometimes the bravest act is walking away before confusion convinces you that suffering is the price of love. Real love is rarely loud, rarely theatrical, rarely impossible to understand. It is found in ordinary moments, a promise kept, a call returned, a hand that stays. A heart that chooses you not once but every day. And in the end, maybe love was never meant to be a mystery. Maybe it was always meant to feel like coming home.